people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. As talks of a rematch between Sandy Ryan and Michaela Mayer have ramped up, the barbs between them have as well. A Twitter user that goes by the name Boxing and Barbecue said, "This was definitely one of the craziest things that happened this year in boxing. Still nothing from the investigation, huh?" Referring to the infamous paint incident right before the fight. Michaela Mayer stated, "I would have slapped that paint on the ass of my fight shorts and said screw it. Instead, Sandy Ryan took a nude photo shoot while her coach begged her to pull out of the fight. Weak." To which Sandy responded, "Weak? Took you to hell for 10 rounds after all that madness, you silly bitch. Watch what happens next."
Getting spicy.
Michaela Mayer responded by saying, "So scared, especially after that concussion I sent you to the hospital for."
Sandy had a concussion.
Sandy responded by saying, "Yep, that's boxing, you stupid idiot. You're next." Widespread speculation as to who could have been behind that infamous paint can incident. Most will tell you that it was Michaela Mayer or somebody she knows, somebody on her team. Most people will tell you that, but not London Runs Boxing.
What?
According to London Runs Boxing, I doubt Mayer had anything to do with this. Is there anything to suggest she does, other than she was Sandy's opponent on the night?
Is he dumb?
No, he's just playing dumb, because he has an axe to grind with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, and an axe to grind with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom fighters. He's got a hard-on for Conor Benn.
He's always standing on his soapbox talking about that guy.
And apparently he has little to no sympathy for Sandy Ryan, who flew to America as a traveling champion. She didn't have to. She didn't have to fight Michaela.
She did so willingly.
And for doing that, she was assaulted, because that's what that is. That's assault. Somebody walks up on you and throws something at you. You don't know what they're throwing at you. Could be paint, could be acid, bodily fluids.
A biohazard.
You don't know. When you look at the CCTV footage of the incident right before it took place, you will notice a white SUV
On the bottom left.
with its hazard lights on, standing right outside the hotel entrance. Sandy Ryan is not so well-known a public figure or athlete, especially not in this country,
That there could be anything random about this.
This was coordinated. This was planned. You see the vehicle is there, clearly waiting for something, someone.
How would they have known where to wait?
It's not something that just any old body would know, any old Joe Blow.
See that when Sandy's coming out, whoever's in the car recognizes her, exits the vehicle, has the paint ready.
They knew exactly who they were looking for and what they were there to do. It's so clearly premeditated, planned. So the question then is, if Sandy Ryan is not a well-known public figure in this country, and she's not, how could someone have known what hotel she was going to be staying in and at what time she would be leaving?
That's not information that just anybody would be privy to.
No, not just anybody, but maybe Michaela and maybe one of Michaela's friends. If she relayed that information, told them where Sandy was staying, where she would be, what time she would be leaving, to make her way over to the garden,
You would have to already be in the loop to know these things.
and so the idea that there was anything random about this assault is preposterous, and London Runs Boxing is only doing what he normally does.
Rooting against Matchroom and Matchroom fighters. Matchroom specifically.
Because like I told you, he's got some kind of hard-on for Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, and Matchroom fighters. London Runs Boxing is not an honorable man.
You are filth!
Full of shit, full of agendas, full of ulterior motives. As usual, you cannot be trusted.
And neither can Michaela Mayer. Even if you can't pin the rap on her directly, it's obvious she had something to do with it, as there are only a few people who would have known what hotel Sandy was staying in and at what time she would be leaving. Now, the NYPD have their hands full with more pressing matters that I don't think they dedicated that much time or manpower to this investigation, because by the time they did, Sandy would have boarded a plane back to the UK anyway. Would have been more trouble than it's worth to them. But you don't need to be Perry Mason or Columbo to figure out what happened here. And it all lends itself to a second fight, to a rematch if there's gonna be one, and there might. Questions that need answers. Michaela Mayer has no intention of going back to the UK, not after what happened in the Baumgartner fight and the more recent Jonas fight. Though at the same time, I don't imagine that Sandy's in any rush to come back to America after what happened to her. So where would this rematch take place? Can they even agree on a location? It's a legitimate question. At the same time, unified champion Natasha Jonas is in the market for a Mayer fight, so who's to say that a rematch with Sandy don't get postponed for a rematch with Natasha? Who's to say? I feel like a rematch between Michaela and Sandy could be very difficult to negotiate, and even if they manage to get that fight over the line, it likely happens under the Top Rank banner, making it that much more difficult for Sandy to win it. To win it, she has to knock Michaela out. That ain't easy. Michaela's fought her fair share of big punchers, Sandy Ryan included, and she's never been stopped. I don't think she's ever even been dropped. She hasn't. So for Sandy, one way or another, it's an uphill battle. There's definitely an audience for a second fight, for a rematch. There is that much more backstory now than there was before, and it could land on the undercard of Lopez versus Matias. We'll see. Men's light heavyweight news. David Benavidez tips Dmitry Bivol to beat Artur Beterbiev in the rematch, and he's keen on facing the winner. David Benavidez has tipped Dmitry Bivol to beat Artur Beterbiev in their light heavyweight title rematch, which is slated to take place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on February 22nd. Russia's Bivol, 34, will be looking to avenge his only career defeat when he renews acquaintances with Beterbiev, 39. Having lost via a controversial majority decision in October, Benavidez, meanwhile, will not only watch their rematch with keen interest, but feels Bivol did enough to win the first meeting. To be honest with you, I felt Bivol won. I think Beterbiev had some good fights, but I honestly felt Bivol won by 1 or 2 rounds, Benavidez told Boxing Scene. I think if they score it correctly, like how the AI judge did pretty good this past week, I think Bivol wins again. If you've just seen the first fight, Bivol was using his footwork really well. I think he was throwing more eye-catching combinations, and I feel like because of that, he won. In October, judges scored the bout 115-113, 116-112, and 114-114 in favor of Beterbiev, a decision which led to Bivol venting his frustrations and asking for a rematch. On February 22nd, Bivol, 23-1, 12 KOs, will have the opportunity to right this wrong against Beterbiev, with Benavidez of Phoenix, Arizona, looking to face the winner. However, with different promotional entities involved, it could be difficult to make the fight between the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol and Benavidez, should of course he beat David Morrell. So that's an interesting tidbit, that a lot of pro boxers seem to have scored the fight for Dmitry. Sean Porter talked about it on the Porter Way podcast.
People who have never been in the ring or not been in the ring thought that Beterbiev won this fight. Most boxers that I saw Andre Ward thought that Bivol won. I saw that Ryan Garcia felt that Bivol won. There was a couple of other fighters out there that you could say were elite or are elite, and I felt like we all knew what we were watching. Yeah. And like I said before, while people are taught how to score a fight based on the people you sit next to in a room, leaning in and telling you how to score a fight, that's how you ultimately end up learning how to score a fight. Whereas we've come up in this thing, we've learned how to win, and we've learned what a win looks like, what a loss looks like, so on and so forth. So
many professional boxers have seen it one way, but the professional judges saw it another. Scoring in the sport of boxing and consistency within it remains elusive. enter this artificial intelligence, this AI judge.
An experiment intended to improve upon how boxing matches are scored,
Though purely anecdotal at this point, scored the Fury versus Usyk rematch wide in Usyk's favor, wider than the actual judges.
I agreed with it.
I saw that fight 9-3 to 8-4 in Usyk's favor, though more 9-3 than 8-4. The artificial intelligence, however accurate or inaccurate one might think it is, has no bearing on the actual outcome of the fight. It's purely anecdotal.
We'll see how it scores the rematch between Dimitri and Artur, and what can Dimitri do differently? What can he improve upon?
Dimitri's stoicism was on full display post-fight. He didn't make any excuses. He didn't blame anybody. He's just angry that he lost, and he wants another go.
What's he got to change?
Those Eastern European boxers, those Soviet-style boxers, are not known for dirty boxing or dirty tactics. Low blows, rabbit punches, sticking your elbow in a guy's throat.
Hitting and holding, excessive holding.
They're not known for that. If you review Dimitri and Artur's fight, it's a very clean fight. It's a very clean boxing match. That stands out to me because what Dimitri might have to change is how clean it is. You might have to hold this guy to smother him.
Take a page out of Vladimir Klitschko's book. Klitschko, I should say.
But I thought you said Eastern European boxers weren't known for dirty tactics.
Well, holding isn't necessarily a dirty tactic. It's a messy tactic, and a lot of people don't like it, but it has its uses.
To interrupt a fighter's momentum, disrupt a fighter's rhythm. You can hold them, you can smother them. If it feels like they're getting going,
They're coming on.
you can see they got 2 to 3 to 4 punches they want to get off. You can disrupt them by holding them, by tying them up. And maybe that's what Dimitri has to change. I don't know that he will.
It's just a suggestion, because Dimitri landed a lot of shots. He landed a lot of punches, and he seldom ever elicited a reaction from Artur Beterbiev.
What I saw was Dimitri landed more punches on Artur, but Artur's punches were a lot more eye-catching. And that when Dimitri would try to get something going, Artur would respond and interrupt him, disrupt him with his thudding power.
Whenever Artur let his hands go, I always got the sense that Dimitri's in danger. Dimitri, who did most of the moving and most of the backpedaling.
Moments where Artur Beterbiev is overpowering him and trying to mow him down. Dimitri fought valiantly, fought a good fight. That if you scored it for Dimitri, I can understand why, but I can also understand why the judges gave it to Artur.
I don't consider that outcome controversial, and bear in mind, I didn't pick Artur to win that fight. I picked Dimitri.
So I don't have an ulterior motive. The fight that I saw was a close fight and a tight fight to where you could have scored it for Dimitri. You could have, but you could have just as easily scored it for Artur. And the judges did.
This will be the first rematch situation that both fighters have ever been in as professional boxers.
An immediate rematch and a somewhat quicker turnaround than Artur Beterbiev is used to, because as we all know, the last couple of years, Artur's been an injury-prone fighter. Oftentimes, there are lengthy gaps from one fight to the next. At 39 years old, I wonder how that quicker turnaround will affect him, because it's not what he's used to.
Dimitri is younger.
Though you could also argue that he was a lot more banged up after the fight than Artur was.
David thinks he won.
David Benavidez, who thinks a fight between him and the winner can happen, he said, "I think it is realistic because we're already talking to Turki El Sheikh," said Benavidez when asked about the realistic nature of the fight. So, obviously, I'm with the PBC, so they would have to go to them. But I mean, it's just a fight that makes sense for everybody. I think Turki El Sheikh is pretty good at going in there and making the fights happen. There's going to be a lot of money for everybody when this fight happens, so I think there's something we could do. It'd probably be easier to make it happen because I think the promotional companies are probably going to be willing to work together for this one.
You know, the PBC don't have the kind of money that Turkey does.
Turkey has already employed some PBC fighters in his Riyadh season shows. Isaac Cruz, Rayo Valenzuela,
Frankie Sanchez.
He's using Carlos Adames for the one in February, so it's not like it hasn't happened already. The olive branch has already been extended. If anything were to happen where David doesn't fight the winner of this fight,
It's bad optics for him because PBC fighters have already fought on Riyadh season shows.
you can't pretend it's not for big money. It's for the best money in boxing right now. You can't pretend it's not for legacy, as it would be for Undisputed. You would be in that situation, the mandatory challenger via both the WBC and the WBA.
You can't pretend that you are otherwise preoccupied with something bigger or something better. David Benavidez has already made 2 pay-per-view appearances here in America, and neither one of those pay-per-views sold anything.
The Plant fight, the Andrade fight, the David Morrell fight he's got coming up. It's a good fight, but I don't know that it's $80 good. I don't know that you needed to bill that as a pay-per-view, and I don't think that's going to sell much either.
Fighting the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol literally is the biggest and the best fight you could hope to have in this division, so there's no reason it shouldn't happen.
Though if it doesn't, David will be the one to blame. That's how it looks. That maybe the PBC are not as protective of Isaac Cruz or Rayo or Frankie Sanchez as they are of David. Not as protective of
Carlos Adames as they are of David. They're not as invested in them as they are in David.
if the fight doesn't happen. Now, David says that it might. David's got the right attitude, and he's saying all the right things. But we'll see. Sometimes it's the fights that need to happen the most that don't happen. Sometimes it's what makes sense
That doesn't come together.
I won't apologize for being pessimistic. I've been watching boxing a lot longer than you guys, and this is a situation where I have to see it to believe it, because I don't like David's chances against either of those guys. Whether it's Dimitri or Artur, I think those fighters are cut from a different cloth than he is.
And I think, given the PBC's thinning stable, David is one of the few recognizable fighters that they have. And I use the term recognizable loosely. Will they part with him as easily as they've already parted with some other fighters? We'll see. February isn't that far away, and all these aforementioned fighters are on the same schedule. David is fighting in February, and so are they. We'll get the answers we're looking for shortly. You know, if David were to have that fight and lose that fight, it wouldn't be the end of the world, or it shouldn't be. But when a fighter has been built up so much
Off of little more than hyperbole and opportunistic matchmaking, a loss can be devastating.
if you can't continue to be the character that they've made you out to be, this Mexican monster.
You know, Wilder losing a Fury never had to be that bad, but between Wilder drinking his own Kool-Aid and overlooking Tyson Fury, that's what made that loss that much worse.
David fighting the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol and losing does not have to be the end of him, but it could be.
These Americans or American-based fighters have not fared well on Riyadh season shows, whether it's Wilder or Emma Williams.
Jared Anderson, Ray Savage.
Will David Benavidez be the next American to get exposed at Riyadh season?